Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you had a really good holiday, whatever it is that you do for your holidays, if you spend it with families or religious things, whatever. I hope it gave you joy. In the meantime, for my first video of this year, I've got a follow-up for the bass video I did last year. So last year I made a video about comparing a PBass with a jazz bass with an active Ibanez to sort of figure out which bass you should use for which kind of music. Well, you know, at least from my opinion. After making that video, I was really quite attached to those two basses. I really like the PBass and I really like the jazz bass. In fact, after making that video, I'm pretty convinced I'm a jazz bass guy. So since they were both Squiers and since I was a big fan of both those instruments, I figured I should upgrade them. I'll go all out, throw everything I want into them, and see how far we can make a Squier go and see how great of a bass we can make out of them. So in this video, I will explain all the mods that I decided to do to my basses, and then we will do a bit of a before and after so that way you can hear the differences and decide for yourself if it was worth it. I've still got the DIs from that last video, so we'll be reamping everything with the same DIs, so it will be the exact same performances of what we used last time, and I'll just, you know, play the same songs, play the same bass lines with the new upgraded versions of the basses, and we will do an A/B comparison to see what's what. So what did I do to these basses? Let's start off with the jazz bass. As I said before, I'm pretty certain I'm a jazz bass guy, so I took the jazz bass and I decided to go all out with it. Now for clarification, even though I'm basically overhauling this entire bass, I don't think it needed this work. I don't think that this work was entirely necessary. It was just a circumstance of, hey, I like this bass, so let's see what I can do with it. So to start off with, I put in a set of DiMarzio Model J pickups. So why did I go for the Model Js? Well, I really like how a jazz bass sounds. I really like the tone of a jazz bass, but I really love what a PBass does to a mix. So kind of my goal for this jazz bass was to make sure it still sounds like a jazz bass, but to try to get it to sit in a mix a little bit more like a PBass. Obviously, they're not going to do the same job. I mean, that's why they're two different basses. But you know, just sort of blur the lines a little bit. So that meant that I was basically looking for two things from the pickups. I was looking for more output, and I was also looking for more mid-range. Now, generally speaking, when you add output, you also get mid-range from pickups. So I was careful with the output. I didn't want to go like atrociously hot, because if you add too much mid-range, you're going to lose all that really spanky top end from the jazz bass, and I'm pretty certain that's what I love most about jazz basses. So apart from the pickups, I also decided to have the whole thing completely rewired. Why? Well, I kind of hate the control scheme. I am a pretty simple guy. I don't like multiple volume controls. I like master volume and I like master tone. If I'm playing my guitar, you know, guitar or bass for that matter, and I want it to get quieter, I just want to control one thing to make it quieter. Or if I want to turn down the tone or whatever, I want one control. I don't want multiple controls. Like, yeah, you could do cooler things with it, but that's not the sort of person that I am. So I had it rewired. Instead of it being volume, tone, instead what I have now is master volume, master tone, and a blend control. That blend control basically just lets you decide how much of the output comes from the neck pickup and how much comes from the bridge pickup, or anywhere in between. Now, I have been told on TalkBass, which, I mean, if you believe internet forums, that's up to you. I tend to believe most of them, but anyways, that's me. I found out on TalkBass that using a blend control, you can sometimes end up with a little bit of top end reduction. We'll deal with that in a second. In fact, let's deal with it right now. Thirdly, DiMarzio recommend with the Model J pickups that you use 500K pots. So since I was getting everything rewired anyway, I was like, screw it, let's replace all the pots for 500K pots. Now, it's a surprisingly big difference between 250K and 500K pots. If you've never experimented with pot values before, I do recommend trying it out one day. You'll be surprised how big of a difference it makes. Basically, what a 500K pot does differently compared to a 250K pot is that a 500K pot lets in more top end and more bottom end than a 250K pot. Now it sounds like an automatic upgrade, and in some circumstances it definitely is. However, in all honesty, single coils generally do go better with 250K pots. Reason being is that single coils already have a huge amount of top end and they've already got a huge amount of bottom end. They don't need the extra top and bottom end by what a 500K pot can provide. However, these Model J pickups are noiseless. They are hum cancelling. So as a result of that, they tend to, just naturally roll off a little bit of top and bottom end. So adding a 500K pot instead of a 250K pot can just bring some of that extra life back in. So you don't really lose anything. Fourthly, is that a word? Nah, we're going with it. Fourthly, I swapped out the bridge for a Fender high mass bridge. Now, bass bridges is one of those things that when you ask the internet, you're gonna get a lot of opinions. There's some people out there who say that if you've, don't have a high mass bridge, then your bass is garbage and just throw it out, it's not worth it. And then there are other people who say it makes no difference whatsoever. And then there are some people who say, anywhere in between. I'm kind of new to taking bass seriously, so I had no idea. So, a high mass bridge is 60 bucks. We're doing everything else. Screw it. Let's throw a high mass bridge on there and see what difference it makes. So, that's the entire motivation here for trying out the different bridge, was just trying it out and seeing if I liked it. The last modification I had done was that I put a series and parallel switch in. Now, normally a J bass is wired in series. Wait, no. Now, normally a J bass is wired in parallel. So that means the signal from the two pickups individually go to the output, and the output kind of puts them together sort of and sends it down your guitar cable. So this means you sort of have two signals going out at the same time. So that's why they tend to have much less output compared to a PBass. But you also get a much sort of broader tone because you're getting the sound from two different spots, sort of. Meanwhile, PBasses are generally wired in series. So a PBass is technically kind of two pickups mounted together, and the signal from one pickup feeds into the other pickup, which then goes back out. So since you have one pickup feeding the other, you end up doubling your output. Now, as I said earlier, with pickups, generally speaking, the more output you have, the more mid-range you have. Since I was looking for that mid-range, and since I was trying to get my J-bass to be a little bit P-bassy, I figured putting in a series or parallel switch was a worthwhile experiment, because since it's on a switch, if I don't like it, I can just leave it off and no harm, no foul. And again, we were doing literally everything else to the bass, so why the hell not? So basically, I kind of ended up overhauling the bass entirely. I've talked for long enough now, so let's check out the results. Black and white is the old pickups, color is the new pickups. I hope you enjoy. New pickups are great. I really like the Model J pickups. They're punchier thanks to those extra mids, but they're also a little bit more compressed, which some people might not like, but what I like about it is that it makes them seem an awful lot more focused. That extra compression sort of feels like you get more of the note coming through rather than just like the new information of what you've just played. It's a really weird way of explaining it, I know. It's the only way I can explain it, so if it makes no sense to you, cool, but that's how it feels to me when you have more compression. When you have more compression, you get a more complete picture of the note. You do lose dynamics, but at the same time, for me, when I play bass, I am generally doing it through a compressor, and then I compress the hell out of it in my DAW. So, you know, I'm not looking for dynamics when I'm playing bass. I'm not James Jamison. So, yeah, the compression in this circumstance is definitely not a drawback for me. It's definitely an advantage. So yeah, these pickups, big fan. They now sound beefier. There's more output, there's more bottom end, there's more mids. Big fan of these pickups. The new control scheme makes me happy. Again, I'm a simple man, so one volume control, one tone control, happy days. The 500K pots I think definitely worked. These pickups do not sound dull, which as I said, I checked out. Hi Whiskey. Sorry, my puppy decided to say hello. Hello, beautiful. Okay, I need to go back to talking to people about bass guitar now. I do. And then we'll go out and I'll throw you a tennis ball for 400 hours for you, which you'll get and then not give back because I don't know why you're called a retriever because, it was worth it. So yeah, the 500K pots thing definitely, I think, helped out. As I said, I have checked out some demos where these pickups sounded really dull. These pickups do not sound dull in the slightest, so I'm going to chalk that up to the 500K pots. The series parallel thing, I could take it or leave it. It definitely does add some more mids and some more punch and everything like that. It definitely does sort of get a little bit more P-ish, I guess. But the mids it adds tends to be like the 500 Hertz-ish sort of mids. And those are mids that I kind of don't really like on bass guitar. So, cool experiment. I'm not sure it worked. The one thing that is good fun about though is that whenever you turn it on, you definitely get louder. So if I was playing live, I would sort of use it as a, hey, pay attention to me now sort of switch, you know, a bit of a solo boost, I guess. One day I might find a use for it, but in the meantime, it's a cool gimmick, and if I never use it, it can stay off and it does no harm. So cool, whatever. New bridge makes me happy. Careful about what I say here about the rabbit hole. However, in terms of the bridge, I can't really be specific about any tonal improvements because I changed everything else about the bass. It's hard to sort of say, aha, this was the bridge, you know? So I'd be dishonest if I was like, oh yeah, the new bridge brought out clarity or whatever. I've no idea. That being said, I can be specific about how it feels from a playing standpoint, and the new bridge definitely feels better. Overall, the string kind of just feels more solid. It kind of feels like it stays in place better, and it just sort of feels like it, it's a little bit more predictable in what it does. I also feel like the string vibrations are a little bit more focused somehow, like it, wobbles around less. And also I do definitely notice a bit of extra sustain. So overall, the bass feels much more solid and direct to play from having this bridge. Is that a placebo? I've got no idea. Look, it makes me happier, so cool, I'll roll with it. How much of it's placebo, how much isn't? Overall, I like the new bridge. So overall, yeah, the jazz bass was a rounding success. The pickups do exactly what I wanted them to do. They sound fantastic. I like the playing improvements from the bridge. I like the control improvements. So yeah, overall, I've got my jazz bass sorted. So let's move on to the PBass. I mean, there's not much you can do, really. That's kind of the best thing about PBasses. They're just such a simple thing. It's a slab of wood with a pickup screwed to it. That's basically it. So what I did do was I replaced the pickup with a DiMarzio Model P pickup and swapped out the pots for 500K pots, and yeah, that was it. So why did I go so hard with DiMarzio pickups? Well, there's a bit of a story here. When I was researching pickups to put into the Les Paul that I had custom built for me, I went on a massive pickup rabbit hole because, of course, I did. I knew I really liked the Seymour Duncan JB in the bridge, but I didn't just want to go out and buy a JB and, without having done my due diligence and without having done some research. So I emailed basically every pickup manufacturer that existed and said, hey, I like a Seymour Duncan JB. Do you guys make something similar that I should consider as an alternative? Now, most pickup manufacturers emailed me a recommendation of something that they made, and to be honest, I was a bit disappointed because some manufacturers were absolutely taking the piss with their recommendations. I'm not going to name and shame, bad pickup manufacturers because I'm sure the pickups were still great, but some were suggesting I try a pickup that had a ceramic magnet. And look, a JB has an Alnico 5 magnet, and I would sort of argue that JBs are the most Alnico 5 pickups that exist. Ceramic magnet pickups are great. I'm not sort of slamming on ceramic magnet pickups. If you like ceramics, go for it. But a ceramic magnet is a completely different flavor to an Alnico 5, especially in a JB. So yeah, if a manufacturer was like, hey, check out this pickup, and it had a ceramic magnet, it was just like, yep, nah, next, not even going to consider that. DiMarzio, on the other hand, gave me the best response. DiMarzio turned around and said, hey, listen, man, if you like the Seymour Duncan JB, get a Seymour Duncan JB. According to the guy from DiMarzio, there's nothing else out there that really does the JB thing aside from a Seymour Duncan JB. So he said, if you like the JB, get a JB. I mean, it seems really obvious now that you say it out loud, right? But why that really impressed me is because DiMarzio and Seymour Duncan are kind of on the same level in terms of pickup manufacturing. They're kind of the direct competitors in the pickup game. So for DiMarzio to turn around and recommend that I buy a Seymour Duncan instead of a DiMarzio, I thought that was really awesome of them, and I thought that was really big of them. So after that email, I was sort of like, cool, you know what? Next time I do a pickup rabbit hole, if I have no idea what I'm doing and I have no idea what pickups to get, I'm going to give DiMarzio a shot because they were really helpful this one time. So as a result, since I don't know much about bass pickups, I was like, cool, my first point of call is going to be DiMarzio. As it turns out, everything that I was looking for all the pickups, DiMarzio's seemed to actually do what I was looking for anyway. So, I mean, happy days. Let's put them in and let's see what happens. Quick note, I didn't replace the bridge on my PBass. And the entire reason why I didn't do that is because I wanted to have a point of comparison. I wanted there to be sort of like something I could compare so that way it wasn't 100% placebo that was sort of messing with me when I sort of decided, no, I like this bridge better. For the record, this has been a hard video to say out loud because every time I go to say bridge, I end up saying bass. Yeah. But yeah, so all the observations I made before about the high mass bridge on the jazz bass, I do make those observations from playing the P-bass with the stock bridge and the high mass bridge on the jazz bass. So even though I'm willing to bet there's some placebo involved, it's definitely not 100% placebo. Anyways, enough talking. Let's see how these pickups sound in this P-bass. Trip report. Overall, these are very aggressive P-bass pickups. Rather than having that wide, thick, low mid, there's actually a bit of a low mid scoop, but instead there's a lot of high mid attack. So it gives you that really sort of clanky high mid pick attack. Now that means that these pickups aren't your traditional sort of P-bass thing. Like, you're definitely not going to be able to play Motown on these. But it does mean that they're going to accept drive and gain really, really well. You're going to be able to push these pickups really, really hard with overdrive pedals or with distortion pedals, and these pickups are going to love it. That lack of low mids means that these pickups aren't going to flub out on you when you start hitting them with huge amounts of gain. So if you're trying to take a P-bass and turn it into some like metal monster behemoth sort of bass, yeah, definitely check out these pickups. Unfortunately, that's not what I want my P-bass for. Since I only want one P-bass, like I'm not someone who believes in having, 7 different versions of the same guitar. So since I only want one P-bass, I kind of do want a traditional P-bass sound. These new pickups have a lot of clarity, which is really great, and it's what I thought I was looking for, because whenever I've played a P-Bass normally, that top end roll-off has always sort of frustrated me and sort of got in the way. So that's why I looked at these pickups, because they seem to add a lot of that top end. It definitely does that. The top end is a lot more fun for me to play when I'm playing it in the room, but I definitely do notice that lack of low mids, and yeah, I actually really miss it. So yeah, I was looking for that bright attack to add to my P-Bass to sort of compensate for what I didn't like, but I feel like as a trade-off, I've lost that growly low mid sort of thing. It's not to say that this P-Bass doesn't work in a mix. It absolutely still works in a mix and still sounds absolutely fantastic. It's just no longer the sort of P-Bass sound that I'm looking for. It's interesting, isn't it? Because this did fix all the problems I had with the P-Bass. And as it turns out, all those problems that I had were actually the things I liked about the P-Bass. So I'll probably try a different set of pickups. I'm looking at the Seymour Duncan SPB2s, the hot pickups. They just seem to have a huge amount of low mids, which I think, as I said, I think that's a thing I'm looking for now. So overall, they are really cool pickups. I love how they sound overdriven with the overdrive pedal or with the dark glass. I think it sounds really cool that way. It's just not what I want my P-Bass to do. So as I said, I'm going to look for something more traditional to put in here instead. So overall, was it worthwhile upgrading the Squiers? To me, yes. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. See, I already liked both those basses. Those basses were basses that I had already connected with, you know, as a person. So as a result, those were the basses that I want to play. Therefore, those are the basses that I should upgrade. And once again, for emphasis, even though I definitely regard the jazz bass as having had a lot of upgrades to it, again, I want to emphasize that the upgrades weren't necessary, but at the same time, the upgrades have made those basses more like my bass.
This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
Now, from the financial side of things, I'm going to acknowledge that the cost of the basses plus all the upgrades was fairly similar to the price of a low-end Fender. So, you know, the argument of should you buy a Squier or should you buy a, you know, low-end Fender, as I said, you're gonna end up spending about the same if you go all out with the upgrades. But the big difference here is that Fender don't sell jazz basses with DiMarzio pickups in them. So if I bought that Fender, I would have to still do the pickup swap, I would still have to do the rewiring, and I'm pretty certain I would still have to do the bass swap, the bass. See, I told you I make that mistake all the time. I'm pretty certain I would still have to do the bridge swap as well. The result of buying that Squier and doing all the things to it, I now have a bass that's set up in a way that Fender don't sell, so therefore, it was worth it. Because at the end of the day, if I did buy a proper Fender, I would do all that work to it again. So, you know, financially speaking, it was still, you know, cheaper in the long run for me to buy the Squier and do all that work to the Squier rather than buying a Fender and doing all that work to a Fender. Aside from the financial arguments, there's a big thing about modifying basses and guitars that I don't think gets talked about enough. And it's that these guitars are now personal to me. They now play how I want them to. They now sound how I want them to. Well, maybe not so much to P, but we'll get there. But yeah, they now do what I want them to. So therefore, they are my basses. These basses now have a little bit of me in them, a little bit of my personality, you know, for better or worse. And I argue that every instrument should be a little bit personal to you. I mean, yeah, you can look at it as a tool, but it's a tool that you use to express yourself. It's a tool that you use to say things that you can't quite figure out how to say with words. So therefore, looking at an instrument like a product or, you know, just like a screwdriver, that's never really made sense to me. I think it's always worthwhile taking an instrument and personalizing it and tweaking it a little bit and putting some of your personality into your instrument. Some of the comments I received on my Gibson video that I made a while back, mostly by Gibson fanboys, was they were asking why I took it so personally that I bought a guitar that was, you know, a crap guitar. And well, now I hope it makes a little bit more sense. I hope. Basically, I view my instruments as a pretty personal thing. For me, they're not just a tool or a product or a screwdriver. They're a thing that, you know, I want to connect with. So yeah, if you're someone who just, you know, buys an instrument and, you know, because it looks cool on the wall or whatever, yeah, we're not speaking the same language. I don't get that. So going back to the basses, Squier fretboards are a lot flatter than Fender fretboards. And as a result of that, I find the Squiers to be much more comfortable to play compared to the Fenders. So since I like the way that those instruments played, those were the correct instruments for me to buy and upgrade. And that's my advice to basically anybody asking, is it worthwhile to upgrade a Squier? First of all, from a quality standpoint, these days Squier and pretty much all the budget brands, yeah, pretty much all of them are great. You know, it's pretty tough these days to find a bad instrument. Unless maybe it's got Gibson on the headstock. It was a cheap shot, I couldn't resist. But yeah, seriously, most of the budget instruments these days at their core are a decent instrument. They just usually have some, you know, mediocre bits bolted to them. So, you know, some dodgy pickups, some dodgy bridges or whatever, but you know, you can generally swap that out. And the question is it worth it? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, rather than worrying about what brand it says on the headstock, you should get the instrument that speaks to you. You should get the instrument that you connect with. You should get the instrument that makes you want to play it. An instrument that you play is always going to be better than an instrument that you don't play. So if you have a $250 Squier and that is the instrument that you play all the time, that instrument is doing a better job than the $4,000 Gibson. So there we have it. That's my experience with overhauling a couple of Squier basses and seeing how far I could push them. Overall, it was absolutely worth it to me. My jazz bass is now, as far as I'm concerned, complete. That's my jazz bass. I'm completely thrilled with it. I can't think of anything else that I want from it. Not that there's anything really I could do to it from here. PBass still needs a bit of work in terms of the pickup choice, but hey, that was my mistake. I bought the wrong pickups for what I was going for. They are fantastic pickups, they're just not the right pickups for what I want the PBass to do. But at the same time, that was still a worthwhile and valuable experience for me because that meant I was able to figure out what I actually like about PBasses and what I want from it, so I now have a better idea of what I'm looking for. At the end of the day, whatever instrument you decide to play, as long as it is an instrument that makes you want to play it, that gives you joy, that you connect with, that is the instrument that you should play, and ignore whatever it says on the headstock. Please leave any comments about other things I should consider doing to these basses. Just out of curiosity, this is like the first time I've ever taken bass seriously, so to speak, so I'm really interested in this topic. But yeah, overall, really happy with how this experiment has turned out. I hope you have a really good new year, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.